Hi there, back again with our second chapter 4 video lecture, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen there and get that up. Okay. Well, last time we were talking about different kinds of reliability tests for reliability. And so we're going to move into the concept of validity now with objective 3 and describing the construct validity, and the indicators of construct validity. So there are different kinds of validity. There's internal validity, construct validity, and external validity. We'll cover internal and external next in the next few chapters. But right now we're going to talk about construct validity. So that is the validity of the construct that you're measuring. So construct validity is kind of the truth of the measure, valid meaning true. It is the degree to which the measure is free from systematic error. For example, are you measuring what you think you're measuring? Are you measuring ACT score, or are you measuring test anxiety? You know, your score, they can say your score is ACT score, but if they're measuring test anxiety, then they're measuring a whole different thing. Okay, so the question is your operational definition really good enough? Are you measuring what you think you're measuring? Say you're measuring, for example, heart rate, but you're using it as a measure of the construct of stress. Is it really a good measure of stress? I mean, that's a good question, right? How well does an achievement test measure achievement? What kinds of irrelevant things does it also measure? So we don't want those irrelevant things in there. We want it to actually measure what it is supposed to measure. Okay. So there are several different ways that you can indicate construct validity. In one way, you're just looking at the face value of the test. Does it look like it measures achievement? Does it look like it measures, for example, if I have a test on depression, but one of my questions is, how many pairs of shoes do you have? I mean, that's not, it just doesn't look like it measures depression. So face validity is just on the face of it. Does it look like a good measure of that? That's not a very good kind of test of validity. Content validity is the next test, and that is the test broad enough in scope to measure the construct? So if you say, for example, the ACT as a measure of aptitude, college aptitude, well, it doesn't really cover social and emotional abilities of college students. It doesn't cover musical abilities of college students. So, for example, how would it cover the aptitude of, for example, a music major who might do very well in music, but doesn't do as well on the things measured by the test? So that's content validity. Does it kind of cover the scope of aptitude, the construct of aptitude? Convergent validity is that the measure should correlate with other measures of the same construct. So high school performance should predict college performance, and ACT should predict college performance. So ACT and high school grades should be correlated. If high school grades are way different than ACT scores, well, we know the ACT is not a very good measure. Discriminant validity is that the measure should not correlate with the results of a different construct. So, for example, the ACT should not correlate with a measure of test anxiety. If I test your ACT scores and then I look at your test anxiety scores, and those are neatly correlated so that if you do more poorly on the ACT, you have higher test anxiety, well, then that's a problem, right? So discriminant validity is when something different should not correlate. And then we get a better sense, if it doesn't, that it's not really about test anxiety. Another measure of validity is what's called concurrent validity. And that's two different groups of people. Do they differ in predictable ways? So we would expect that, for example, high school seniors are going to score better on the ACT than high school dropouts. They should. And if they do, that's a measure of the validity of the ACT test, because we would predict that those who are finishing high school have greater aptitude for college. Predictive validity is, does the measure predict what it should? For example, does the ACT, if the ACT is about achievement or aptitude in college, it should predict college graduation. Those students who did well on the ACT should be more likely to graduate than those students who do poorly on the ACT. If it doesn't predict that, well, then that's a real problem. And as you can guess, the ACT has had many problems with regard to validity, and many schools are now not using the ACT because it's not a very good predictor, in fact, of high school, or excuse me, college grades and other kinds of predictive validity issues. Okay, well, let's, here's a exercise. If you'd like to pause and do that exercise, please feel free. Objective number 4 is ways of improving the reliability and validity of a measure. So first I'm going to give you 3 on the next slide, and then 4, 5, and 6 on the next one after that. Improving reliability and validity, you're better off using an established measure. So there are many, many measures that have been published, and they'll be published in journals, and in that journal article, they will tell you about the reliability and validity. Once that's been established, then you can use the measure. And so making your own measure is really risky. You want to use a measure that has high reliability and validity. Pilot testing new scales. If you do make your own measure, give the scale to 20 people and do a reliability test and see the results, or give it to them twice and do a reliability test, see the results. Interview participants on face validity, content validity, and see, you know, whether you can get some validity there. Another way that you can improve reliability in particular is to add more items to your scale. So if you have a questionnaire of 10 items is going to be less reliable generally than a questionnaire of 20 items. So up to about 20 items, we do increase the reliability by adding more items. After 20, it's really negligible, the increase. Next is writing good test items. Remember that those tips in chapter 3 about writing survey items. Using those tips will help you to get a more reliable and valid test. Giving very clear instructions and making sure your instructions are the same every time you give the test will reduce that random error. Writing items with face and content validity in mind. Are you covering the scope? Does this look like it's measuring the item? Also, writing items with social desirability bias in mind, because you have to be careful that you're not going to trigger people's social desirability bias. So that is the end of chapter 4, and I wish you the greatest of luck on the chapter 4 exam. Thank you for listening.